We're starting today with a man who's been on our TV screens for the last quarter of a century. He's done many things in the course of an extraordinary career, but he's most famous, or notorious, for his confrontational TV show. He is, of course, Jerry Springer, and the Jerry Springer Show is now in its 25th year and still being shown in dozens of countries around the world. Jerry is here with me now. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk in a minute, but first I just want to see a clip from that very famous show.
You got it.
Wow, I mean, you're still so enthusiastic after doing it for 25 years.
Yes, yeah. The show is stupid, but it's a lot of fun.
Right. So, okay, so you think it's stupid? That's interesting, because it's spawned, so many copies and in a way changed television, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I'd like to apologize.
And do you really mean that?
The culture.
Right.
Well, I'm being a little bit facetious. It's a silly show, and it shows outrageous behavior. But that's what the show's about. For example, if you did a show on crime, every day you would be showing crimes. That doesn't mean you support crime. It means that's what your show's about. Our show, I was hired to host the show about relationships that are either dysfunctional or out of the ordinary. And so every day I know they're going to give me something that's out of the ordinary, and so I can't complain about it. And people obviously enjoy watching it, which is why it lasted for 25 years, but it's still going strong, yeah.
Well, you say dysfunctional relationships. Let's take a little look at one of those relationships playing out now.
Sure.
We just got back together 3 weeks ago and you're back on the challenge.
The fact is, though, that these are real people with real lives.
It has to be real. Yeah.
And do you find that exploitative at all?
No, because the question is a little bit elitist. Because what I mean by that is that if it was a wealthy, famous celebrity, really good looking, and they come on these late night shows and they talk about who they've slept with, what drugs they've been using, they write a book, we can't wait to see them in the movies, we can't wait to buy their albums, and we cheer them. If you have the exact same story by people who you don't know, who aren't necessarily good looking, who certainly aren't wealthy or famous, they're not celebrities, all of a sudden we say, oh, that's trash. So why is it okay that wealthy, powerful celebrities can do something, and yet when it's someone who isn't famous, then we find it inexcusable? It really is a double standard, and it probably, even though, the show is, as I said, it's a silly show, but it's showing a part of society that exists, and somehow we get offended if they just don't look the way we want them to look.
Okay, well, I want to see another clip now, because there's one thing allowing people to talk in that forum. There's another thing staging a fight. Let's take a look at this clip.
Sure.
Do you want your Thanksgiving together with me? Is that what you want?
I want you to be my girlfriend too, Mama.
Your girlfriend. And your Thanksgiving. Want more Thanksgiving? There's more Thanksgiving. What else do you want?
That's obviously very staged, isn't it? And audiences know that.
Well, I don't know what you mean by stage.
Well, because you put food there and
Right.
you're saying to them, use it. It's
No.
obvious what you want them to do, no?
Oh, I know they're probably going to wind up doing that, but it's like, and you've probably been on, you go on these very posh late night shows, let's say, or whatever, and a producer talks to you ahead of time and says, we're going to do this, then you're going to talk about that, then we're going to do that, and no one says that these people are being exploited. In other words, these people volunteer to come on the show, they know what they're going to be doing, and it's okay if they do it, if it's okay, as I said, if wealthy, powerful people do it. We really do have, particularly when I'm over here in Great Britain, there really is a double standard. All I have to do is open any one of your newspapers on any given day, and by the time I get to page 3, I've got 20 stories of the most dysfunctional behavior, things that are totally inappropriate, but you can't get enough of it. And yet when it's on television, you say, oh, you would never ask a reporter from a newspaper, well, how could you, that, you know, kids might see that newspaper. It's on a newsstand. Why would you put that picture in the newspaper? You show naked people.
Well, there's a big question about that at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, but you do that,
Yeah.
and you've done it for years,
Yeah.
and so I think it's a fair question to say.
Naked women, we should say,
Yes,
not naked men.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, you know, where is the standard? Look, I don't watch the show, but it's not aimed at 71-year-old men. If I was in college, I clearly would watch the show. I mean, that's who, you know, that's our audience. So, but, you know, I don't get all, in a sense, uptight about it, because this is what is in society, and in a free country, television ought to reflect the whole society, not everybody who just looks beautiful.
Have there been times, though, when you've drawn the line and you said, I don't think this is appropriate? There were clips that we couldn't show on this.
Well, I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed to know what the show's about. So when I come in, they hand me a card, and which you see me carrying around, and the card has the names of the guests on, but that's it. And then I'm supposed to ask questions that you would ask sitting at home watching, and then make jokes. That's my job, to just ask questions and make jokes, but I'm not allowed to. So I'm not allowed to pick the subject. I'm not allowed to pick the guests. I'm not allowed to know what the show is about. So, of course, I'm not allowed to say, well, I'm not going to do that. The only rule is you're not allowed to have censorship. It has to be truthful, and it has to be outrageous. It has to be outside the norm of acceptable behavior. For example, if you would call me with a warm, uplifting story, we're not allowed to run it. We're required to send it to another show that deals with those issues.
Right.
We're only allowed to do things that are inappropriate, because that's, you know, I guess
That's the
what the
point
show
of the
is.
show.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to just move away from the Jerry Springer show, because there's so much more to your life than that.
Okay.
You're a politician, a lawyer, you've appeared on Dancing with the Stars, hosted America's Got Talent, all sorts of things.
You've been stalking me.
Yes, I have. I've been doing my research. And it's not just that you're living an extraordinary life now. It seems to me that when you entered this life, it was under extraordinary circumstances. Tell me about that.
Oh, you mean when I was born here?
Yes, in England.
Yeah, I was born in London, and I was born at a subway tube, the Highgate station, is what my mom told me. And because during the war, women often spend their nights, in the evenings, particularly in their 9th month, in the subway tubes, you know, in case there'd be bombing or whatever. And so I was born 11:45 at night, so
Gosh.
yeah.
Under difficult circumstances, because your family had been persecuted.
Well,
you
my
had to
family
flee.
I lost my family in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So mom and dad survived, but the rest of the family, you know, was exterminated. And mom and dad got to England, came here where my sister and I were born. Mom and dad got out in the first week of August of 1939. 3 weeks later, September 1st, Hitler goes into Poland to start World War II. So, and then the gates came down and no Jews were allowed to leave. So basically, you know, by 3 weeks, we made it. We were one of the, I wasn't alive yet, but my parents were one of the last 2 people, one of the last. There were about 85 others or 100 others. They were left at the very end.
Gosh.
And so they got out. A month later, my sister was born. A couple of years later, as I said, I was born during the war. So England saved our lives, gave me a life. So
And then you went
I'm
to
an
America.
Anglophile.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Then my parents, when I was 5, I found out I couldn't be king, so I was really ticked off. So mom and dad came to America. We came over in the Queen Mary, a 5-day voyage, docked in New York, and I grew up in New York.
And how much do you think that beginning has driven you to be this super successful man that you are today?
Well, thank you. I'm a lucky man is what I am. That's the important thing is to remember luck is 99% of who we are, you know. And so I've had a very lucky life. But it certainly, my family experience certainly shaped my politics. It certainly made me liberal. It certainly made me fight always against discrimination. I got involved in politics in the civil rights movement and then in the anti-war movement back in the 60s against the Vietnam War. And that's how I got into politics and wound up working for Bobby Kennedy. And then after he was killed, took a law job and then got back into politics and got elected mayor of Cincinnati. So, but my liberalism and my passion is politics. I make my living in television. You know, I make my living in show business, but what I believe in and passionate about are political things. And I always knew that I would make my living doing something other than politics, just like I wouldn't make a living at my religion. You know, that's something you believe in. That's something that's very personal to you, and you don't want to ever compromise it. Well, when you have a job, you're always compromising. You have to do what your boss says. You have to, you know, I didn't want to be under the pressure whereby if I don't win the next election, I can't feed my family. And too many politicians make a living at politics, which I think is dangerous, because then you'll start to become at least intellectually dishonest. You start to compromise your positions because the most important thing to you is to get elected, because you have to support your family, so you got to get elected. Well, then we start getting bad politics.
But given that there is this clearly serious side of you, and that's what matters to you, how do you feel about the fact that when people think Jerry Springer, it's for this flippant, frivolous programme that you are known?
Number one, that's here. That's not in America. Okay, so you just know me because of that, which is fine. That's my job. That's how I should be known to you. But that doesn't define me. Like I now know you as a news anchor. There are parts of your life I know nothing about. I don't know what's really important to you, what your relationships are, what, you know, that's personal. That's, you know, so those things don't have to be, you don't do these things to become famous. When you believe in something, you know, it's not so you can make money or you can be, you know, your job is for that. So it's always important to separate who you are from what you do for a living. If you're a truck driver, what could you draw from that? If there was a truck driver, would you say this person's not religious? Would you say this person, you know, isn't for equal rights? You don't know anything about that person. He's a truck driver. Well, I do a television show, but that doesn't define my politics. You know, I could do a television show and be really conservative. You know.
I love this. I feel like we're having a conversation about philosophy here. I've got one more brief
conversation
for you.
No, this is great. You're easy to talk to.
That's my job.
Yeah.
One last question.
I don't
you
know
mentioned
what
earlier.
really, but no, go ahead.
You're 71, as you mentioned
I'm
earlier.
71, yes.
Showing no signs of slowing down. What's next for you?
I'd like to be king.
Right. Okay, easy.
no,
Just that then, nothing else.
I don't have career goals. I mean, if I don't need, I'm lucky, thank God. I don't need to make a living anymore. I do this because it's fun. I mean, I can't think of another reason to continue to be in show business other than it's fun to do. And what am I going to sit home and play golf? So I just don't want to do that. So as long as I'm healthy, and obviously people enjoy the shows that I do. I do this show, but I do other shows too. I do the national tour, The Price is Right, and I do Baggage, which is a TV dating show. So I do lots of other shows, but it's fun, you know? Let's say we go out to dinner, and I'll say, well, how was your day? And not you, anyone in the world, I'll go out to dinner with them. How was your day? And you will say, well, it was a rough day at the office, but a funny thing happened at the water cooler, and and we'll both laugh, that was funny. And then you'll say, Jerry, what was your day like? And I'll say, well, I had a guy who married his horse. I'm always going to have the better story.
You are.
So why wouldn't you want my job?
And listen, I could listen to these stories all day, but we've run out of time. Jerry
No!
Springer, I know.
Okay.
Thank you so much, though, for coming on.
Very nice meeting you.
And you.
Yeah, thanks for
All the
having me.
best. Thank you.
Sure.